insane money. It was like 160% like profit you were getting out of it.
That's same
So
wood
it
pellet
was
burners, wasn't
mental.
it? And
Yeah,
people were putting
yeah.
like 6 or 7 in their shed and then just filling them up and letting
I
them go.
that's sure you have a ton of them in your back shed there, Shay, don't you?
That's right, yeah.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Here's the Craic podcast. We have another episode. We have another guest. We have Sarah Gray on the podcast today. Some of you may know her as Sarah Gray, and some of you may know her as Politics Made Simple.
Yep.
So you are a podcaster yourself. You're part of the competition. We're out here to cast you out. That's why we've got you on. You run your own page, Politics Made Simple. So do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. I'm not a podcaster. That is definitely not my Instagram bio. That is just not a thing at all. I do have a podcast, but it's not half as professional as this one. Yeah, I did. I started Politics Made Simple 2 years ago, and it was meant to just be somewhere that I could tell my friends. You know, my friends would always I'd be the one come and ask, what's happening with Theresa May, and I have to repeat myself 10 times. So I thought I'll just put it on an Instagram page, and they can all just look at it there rather than having to keep talking about it. But yeah, it just didn't work like that. It kind of blew up a wee bit. People wanted to hear about it, and ever since it's been growing, and I've been winging it. That's it. I go out and I put out things about all the parties and try to break down whatever's in the news. I felt like there's a lot of headline readers. So there's people that would go out and they would just read whatever they see on Facebook, or maybe if they'd see a few tweets on Twitter and stuff like that, and they didn't go much deeper. So I sort of wanted to make it a page where young people, when I was younger, I was interested, but it was so hard to even try to get a grasp of these big massive things you would hear every day on the TV and stuff. So I just wanted to make it easy for people. Do you know what I mean? Anything for an easy life, just to be able to go on and read it. And, if someone wanted to learn about Brexit, or if someone wanted to learn about the referendum or anything like that, there'd be somewhere where they could go and just get it, where someone normal was talking to you, rather than all the fancy words and stuff. But no, it's good.
You obviously do have an interest in politics, hence why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah,
but what sort of background is it you have sort of in the whole thing?
Of course. Well, like I say, I was interested in politics literally probably since I was a wee. It's always been in the house, sort of watching the news, and from my daddy as well. My daddy would be huge into politics, especially American politics and stuff. So it was just sort of feed into me, it was you're just watching the news every evening. And then obviously I went to school, and I remember we went to Stormont for a day trip or something, and that was it. Just fell in love with the place. I remember we all were there was different people. There was 5 people chosen, and we all had to be our own party, whatever. We had to make up our own party, and that's when I got Sarah Gray MLA, because I won, and I was I nailed it. So I think that's when I sort of realized politics was a way to do something without having to sort of, I don't know, think too much about it. So then I just went. We did LLW in St. Collins, where I went to school. Now LLW isn't a real GCSE in some other schools, but it was actually useful for me. There was one politics module, and that sort of helped kickstart things. And then I did, history, where you learn about, there's a lot of politics, political aspects of that as well. And then I went on to do A-level politics in a mixed school, which was the best thing ever. I loved it so much. I went obviously with it's called MLP. So we went down to the high school, and I did a mixed class, learned about politics, and then obviously just went on to do politics. It was in the Met actually. I did more in depth, so it was political science and ethics and stuff like that. So it's just sort of been a bit of everything, 3 into 1, trying to learn everything as you go along.
Wing it.
Mm-hmm. Did that frustrate you in high school, where there isn't really a politics class or anything? You don't really learn that much about it. I didn't say in high school anyway.
Yeah, I think it was more so I didn't notice it, to be fair. Obviously when you're in school, you're too busy, I don't know, organizing formal and stuff. You weren't really thinking about a politics module. But when I left school, I noticed it massively. My friends, I have one of my best friends that did medicine, really, really intelligent girl, completely, be able to get A stars the whole way through school. Yeah. But if you asked her what who your local MP or MLA was, you wouldn't have a clue. When you asked her how many people sat in the government, not a notion. And it was all sort of like came to light when the whole RHI thing happened. So that's when I sort of would have been leaving school. And obviously Martin McGuinness and stuff had like broken down the government. And again, there was the headline readers. It was just sort of, oh, they haven't been in government for a year or 2 years or whatever it was. And everyone was raging. They were like, oh, well, we could all work from home or stay at home. I mean, they're the ones that jinxed this, I'm pretty sure. They all wanted to work from home for a year, but no, they just, that annoyed me because I feel like people forgot about the reasons why behind it. So I think being able to do it on Instagram page, just sort of talking to someone your own age was easy.
Is this like when the government, like, well, in Northern Ireland stopped for like, what was it like? Was it a few years?
Yeah, it was 3 years, I think, just under 3 years.
This might be a bit of a stupid question, but like, I honestly don't really know anything about politics, like. But like, what was the reason behind it, though?
Yeah, there was no stupid questions. Like that was the other thing. Like everyone felt stupid if they wanted. Like I remember someone asked me, they were like, "What is a first minister? Like, what does it even mean? And why is there two? Why is there a Catholic one and a Protestant? Like, you know what I mean?"
Yeah.
It was like they're just like two different models. But no, all it was, it broke it down because the whole RHI scandal.
Oh yeah.
There was like loads and loads of money wasted, like millions and millions of pounds wasted on the RHI scandal that obviously had been, rooted through Arlene Foster and like her party and stuff. Obviously, it was a mix of both because they're on the committees and stuff, and the way of it going through, it's everybody in the government was involved in it. Do you know what I mean? But it was signed off. The person's name at the bottom of the whole thing was Arlene Foster, so of course she got the whole stack of it.
Yeah.
So Martin McGuinness said that he wouldn't go back into government until it was a proper investigation put through. So he said that he wanted the whole thing investigated, why there was money being wasted, why it was a lot of people found out that it was a lot of DUP like fundraisers and sympathizers and voters that was making most of this money. It was like fire burners. So you got, was it something crazy? Every pound you put in, you got 160 back. So it was insane money. It was like 160% like profit you were getting out of it.
That's the same wood pellet burners, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and people were putting like 6 or 7 in their shed and then just filling them up and letting them go.
That's sure you have a ton of them in your back shed there, Shay, don't you?
That's right. Yeah, I think we mentioned that in the podcast a while ago. I have about 5 of them in the shed.
Yeah.
But what was the like? Talk us through that. Like, why? What was the incentive behind like doing this here? The government doing this, was it like to create renewable energy or
so
what?
It was to get the farmer. Not even, it was, well, obviously it had the renewable aspect, but they wanted to like fund the farmers. They were doing something for the farmers, it was all through like agriculture, and like they wanted to work for the farmers. And the initial idea behind this was that it would be able to save businesses and farmers money, so they would be able to use this instead of other resources. There was a different option that was going to be cheaper for them. Yeah. Now, where the 160 profit came from, I have no idea. I genuinely think they picked that out of the sky because it makes no sense. The amount of hours I've spent trying to read into it, why they would have thought like that is completely beyond me. But there was, if it had been on paper, if it had been regulated properly, it would have been able to start off. And maybe 5 years down the line, if you bring the profit down, it would have worked, and it would have made money eventually. But people just, a lot of people turned a blind eye. And I think that was the other main thing that people were annoyed at, because, like I say, it was a lot of DUP voters and people that would have donated toward the DUP. There was loads of people. I remember in the newspaper, it came out, everybody that had one of these burners. So there was a list printed in the newspaper of all of the people and the businesses that had how many of these burners they had.
Was this like a name and shame thing, or?
Literally, they had to do it legally. They had to put everybody's name out on it. And to be fair, there were some people using it. There was like one, they were using it for their business or whatever. And maybe they didn't know the full extent. You have to assume that people didn't know the full extent of it and what all the rest. But you have some man up in Fermanagh and he has 16 of them in a chicken house out the back. Like, it's just, he was making a fortune.
Boiler busters.
Literally, it was insane to like watch and see. And at the time, like, that was, do you remember, like, back before all the corona stuff, like the NHS was every day you looked up news, it was like the NHS is on its knees, there's no beds, all the rest. So people got very easily annoyed at the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then obviously, like I say, Martin McGuinness said he wanted a proper investigation put into it. So he wanted the investigation, and Arlene Foster refused. So then he said that, you know, it's kind of like going on strike. He was like, well, we're not doing it until you can actually do that. And it took so long. It just took, you know, that amount of time. And people,
was it like 4 years, wasn't it?
Just under 3 years, yeah.
That's
so it was
mental.
like, yeah. But I mean, they were still working. That was the main thing. You watched the headline and seen that, oh, they were sitting at home and stuff like that. But the only thing they weren't doing was putting through new legislation. So if you think about it, they were still being, you know, ruled by Westminster and stuff, and they were still doing everything in the community. They just weren't proposing. They couldn't get through any new legislation. So, I mean, if you read the headline, the story is completely different. What you actually could pick up very easily. I think that would be the main reason I did it.
Do you feel like, as a young person, like, because you're in around the same age as us, do you feel like, does it frustrate you the way, like, not a lot of young people know a lot, especially about Northern Ireland politics? I would say that would probably come from a place where people just couldn't be arsed, because there is so much crap goes on around it. Yeah. And everybody's falling out and disagreeing and shouting with each other. Like,
that's honestly like, I don't mean to cut you off, but like, that's why I would have no interest in it, because it's just, I just feel like there's more harm than good in it, and I just couldn't be bothered wasting my energy, like, you know, getting invested in it.
Yeah, no, but that's 100% right. Like, I feel I wouldn't get frustrated. I think I sort of understand it. Do you know what I mean? I know exactly where you're coming from. Like, it's, why would you want to sit down and listen to the Arlene and Michelle on the TV shouting about something like road signs? Like, what's the point? And there's so many other things to be worrying about in your life other than that sort of stuff. So no, I wouldn't get frustrated. I would sort of understand. I would just be like, the page was somewhere for people to go if they had like an issue. So one of the main ones that I did was for the young people, was the landlords. So at the very start of the coronavirus and stuff, obviously people were still paying for their houses and they weren't actually there, which was insane to me. That was mental. That was daylight robbery. I'm just so glad that I didn't have to do that. But a lot of students that wouldn't have been so much interested in politics, they would have still came to the page and been like, listen, like, what can we do about this in a political way, kind of thing. So they can use politics in like their sort of day-to-day life. And I think that would be a good way to sort of think of the younger people aren't to blame. You know, it definitely isn't. When you see about the whole past and stuff, it's not the young people to blame for not being educated in it. I think is when it affects your everyday life. So the likes of taking £250 out of your bank every month, then you want to get involved. You just sort of need that spark to realise.
How did the government handle that? But I remember hearing something like you didn't have to pay they ended up, it was like you didn't legally have to pay your rent or something like that there, but then you'd eventually have to pay it in the long run. Or what way did they handle it?
A lot of landlords, they didn't listen to that. A lot of landlords were saying, like, listen, if you don't pay, you're going to go to court and stuff like that. Now, to be very honest with you, any advice that I give to anybody that was coming to the page, the main things I would first of all ask is, are they fully, you know, HMO regulated? Like that. Yeah. If you ever in the Holy Lands and stuff, very, very few of the houses are going to be HMO regulated, which means that there's not a chance that they're going to go to court. It would cost them a fortune to go to court, so they're just lying. And you're going to find a lot of people, a lot of the landlords up in Belfast are like that. I think the end of it, a lot of students just paid the money, which is a bit sad. Now, I've heard of a few landlords, private landlords, more than like the likes of property, you know, the other ones. The private landlords would tell them, like, listen, you don't have to pay the last 2 months, or here's your deposit back, we can use it for this. But they were, you know, they sort of worked with the students, which was sort of nice to see as well.
Yeah. But then I suppose you could look at that from another point of view, and then you could say that the landlord's getting out of pocket for that.
Yeah, that's completely the other side. It definitely is. I think where I was looking at it was from the side of the students. You know, I'm sure we've all been in a Holy Land's house. We've all seen the state of the Holy Land's houses. The money that they were getting for them, you know, that whole year kind of made me sick. You know, in a house with like maybe 5 or 6 people, they were getting over £1,000 every month for a house like that. And I just feel like they were getting a lot of profit. And at that sort of time, it wasn't a time to be looking for profit. Do you know what I mean? Maybe if they even brought it down a bit so that they could break even or they could pay their bills and stuff, you couldn't be putting someone else out, but it would be nice to see them sort of going towards the students for once. Be a good one.
Yeah.
And what did you make of like the way the Northern Ireland government sort of handled COVID, like just in general?
Shocking. Absolutely shocking. The country should have been closed down. Like, that's just a fact. The whole thing should have been shut down. The fact that, I mean, that would be a real controversial thing to say as well, but there shouldn't have been any planes in and out of England or the mainland, and there shouldn't have been any transport up and down from the south either. The whole thing should have been shut down. It's like, you think that's a simple thing to say, isn't it? Ireland's so small, or Northern Ireland even is so tiny. It shouldn't have been that hard. It shouldn't have been that difficult to close the borders completely on both sides. You know, save any stress. But it was shocking, completely ridiculous. And I think at one stage, the whole policing aspect of it, you couldn't do it. You know, people getting fines and stuff, and then it was certain people getting fines and others not. Like, we were watching actually last Sunday, so we were in Belfast, and obviously the Rangers had just won their match, and we've all seen the videos of like the celebrations and stuff. Waiting for it. But no, that's like, everyone was out celebrating, everyone was out having a good time and everything. And fair enough, they won. It was not expected, and like, yeah, good for them, absolutely. But it was talked about like for a day. You know, you seen all like the parties and like the road. Like, there's literally a road party. I've seen on like these videos and stuff. And we seen that for like what, an hour on TV, and then they were talking about St. Paddy's Day. You know, do you know what I mean? So they were ready a week before it actually happened. They were already saying, oh, there's going to be more police, there's going to be blah, 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 blah. So even the stuff as simple as COVID, they were still able to make a conversation about, oh, they like the Protestants more than the Catholics. Do you know what I mean? It was just, it's hard to listen to sometimes. It definitely is.
I think that's one of the reasons, like, I think young people, like, I think you're brave doing what you're doing with the podcast, is because like a lot of ones our age would shy away from it because of like sectarianism, and like even us, like, we'd be really careful of what we would sort of talk about or say in this podcast because of, like, you know what I mean? You don't want to be.
You don't want to offend anybody.
The thing is though, when it comes to the likes of what we do, and I think that's why a lot of people listen to what we do, because there is a dynamic where, like, it's not like, you know, if you had Thomas and Shay, you'd be getting a one-sided sort of viewpoint there, whereas then you introduce me into the equation, and there's kind of that sort of nice wee like salt and pepper balance. But at the same time, like we have the crack like between us. But once that comes out of the, you know,
what an example, like, just salt and pepper balance, and what does that even mean?
Well, like, it's like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like,
I know what you're saying.
If your ma sets the table and puts pepper down, you're gonna be like, ma, where's the salt? And vice versa. Do you know what I mean? So it's a nice wee balance. But
you'd obviously be the pepper then.
Exactly.
We're salty as fuck.
But it's a case of like we can have the crack between each other, like, and Thomas takes the piss out of me on a daily, and like I take the piss out of them too. But at the same time, once we start, like, there was one time where we done a podcast where I think, Thomas, you kind of said something like your political opinion on something.
But it was basically
flags.
It was
oh
like,
my God.
It wasn't even flags. It was like, what I basically said was, you know,
Europe's.
the way you always see, like, in a Protestant area, there'll always be like pavements painted red, white, and blue. Like, I was like basically saying, like, it's very rare you would see like a tricolor painted on a pavement
On
type
the
of thing.
curbs.
On the curbs, only on the curbs, whatever. And some
Yeah,
people,
that's
there was like
true, though.
people being like, yeah, that's so true. And then you'd have ones being like, oh, well, have you ever been here? And you're literally like, I've drove through there like 100 times. Like, you're talking out your ass. Like, I maybe there is places, but like from where I'm from,
I've never seen them.
I haven't seen them.
No.
So,
Yeah, but then
neither.
at the same time, like, I would argue and say, like, yeah, I get it. See, around like the 12th time down my way, yeah, you would maybe go through one section, like one estate, and there would be the curb, like the curb side would be painted. But then you're looking at that, and there's banners and there's flags and there's bonfires everywhere and stuff, and like that is common. But then at the same time, like I feel like with something like that, like I do come from like quite a predominantly Protestant area, and I would say like unless I'm just conditioned to maybe not look at that and like not take that even under my radar, like I would argue and say like there's not a lot of that. Like I could take you on a full tour of Ballymena and around all the wee estates, and like I would guarantee you I would maybe know one or two places where I would be unsure if there would be that, but I'll be confident enough to say I don't think there would be. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Strange.
no, I think it's sort of like what you say as well. Maybe and even ourselves, like maybe if we see like a Union Jack or whatever plastered on the side of a building, we would be more prone to look at that and think, God, isn't that a mess on there? And it could be completely the same for yourself. If you were to see like a load of tricolors hanging out a window, you could be like, God, doesn't that look terrible in that house or whatever? And you would sort of maybe like be more prone to look at the other side, just even literally like say being conditioned, not even realizing. But the likes of like, I know the painting on the curbs and stuff, it's just sort of again something that we've sort of been conditioned to. I ignore it, to be honest. It's just one of those things you drive past and think, God, it makes the road look a bit dirty, doesn't it? Like that's it. You don't really think about what it means or who put it there. And again, some people could be offended by that. People would think, oh well, you should think about the meaning behind it. But it's you walk on it like. You know what I mean?
I think the point we were basically talking about was like when you're going through like a Protestant area, it's like more obvious than like it wasn't necessarily having a dig at anyone. It was more just like an observation. But then like it's things like that is like when you sort of talk about something that you wouldn't really think's a big deal, and then you get such a reaction. Sometimes you're like, what if I did say something that was actually properly?
Yeah.
And then we done the Nolan was the only other one like we sort of talked about that there was a bit of a lot of people either standing up for him or they were like, oh, he's an obla.
Oh no, 100%. I think one of the main things is where I probably learned from the page that you just have to say it. Do you know what I mean? People are gonna disagree, especially here. You just say it, and as long as you've no intent of like being like really nasty or even having any intent behind it, if it's what you think, then nobody can really disagree with what you believe or what you think. I think that was the main thing. I always think that people are very high to judge whatever way you're thinking, and as long as you can explain yourself, then
that is an issue amongst young people, though, I think, and young people are getting worse. Like I say, young people, like people around our age, I feel like are getting worse for it, where like I feel like everybody is always so quick to say like, oh, let's have a conversation and stuff, but then once that conversation arises, like I know like myself, and I know Thomas, I could speak for Thomas and Shay and say that like if we had an opinion, it wouldn't come from a place of maliciousness or like to harm any, but like we would never want to offend, we would never want to do anything to hurt anybody, but it would be our opinion. But you're so conditioned now as like kind of, especially around really sensitive topics and all, like a lot of young people would talk about, it's like, should I give my opinion on that, or I'm just going to get ridiculed? Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. That's 100%. It's one thing I knew it was going to come with the page. You know, people are going to tell their opinions, and what like the 100% the main thing is as long as you can explain yourself, as long as you can explain where you're coming from and the idea you've got behind it. And a lot of the time, I'll have an opinion and I'll I'll put it out or whatever, and someone might test with a completely different view. And being able to talk to somebody without getting personally offended because they disagree with you, I think it's something that a lot of people sort of need to bring forward. No one, a lot of I'm going to say 60% of my friend group are Protestants. I'm best friends with all the rugby boys. Do you know what I mean? So I'm again conditioned to, they're not going to agree with you, but that's nothing to do with the fact that we're going to go out drinking on the Friday. You know, it's not because they hate me, or it's not because they know the whole family's terrible. The history's, it's gone. It's not worth. I think myself, like I said, it's not worth the effort for me anyway, of just hating somebody for no reason. At all.
I feel like it's something here that's just bred into you really from a young age. One thing I always find on do you be on TikTok much?
Like embarrassingly too much.
Yeah, but obviously it's for a younger audience, but like you go on the TikTok and there's something slightly remotely sectarian on it, and the next thing the comments are just Union Jacks, tricolors the whole way down. Flags. And they're kids, like they're like 14, 15, like they have no clue, like realistically, like they're just doing this because that's what they know.
I always wondered what it would be like if I think like say that's what I say when I was in school, I was definitely like dropped into the deep end. Going down to the high school, like I say, I went to St. Collins, which is a tiny, tiny high school. I think there was less than 500 people in it, maybe 600. So it was really, really small. And then I went to a school down in Marfelt again, really small, not a huge school at all. And I was dropped into the Marfelt High School, and it was like, here's a Catholic, go ahead. And it's sort of like going in your uniform and stuff. It was daunting the first couple of times, it definitely was. And they had the Union Jack flying outside, and I was hearing my grandma saying, "Isn't that Tara? My God, look at the schools these days." You know what I mean? Like I could hear him saying that. I'm walking up. It definitely was. It was scary. But after like 2 or 3 days, one of the boys that like pushed me to do the politics page, Mark Lane, I will forever give him credit. He was very like neutral. He went to the Rainy. He was like 100%. Yeah, he was.
Rainy.
Pretends to be posh, not even nearly. But it was good to be through into the deep end. I really enjoyed that. I loved being able to have that conversation. Now, they weren't always great. Sometimes you walked away raging. It was being 16, 17, 18. You weren't always going to have that, like they have no idea what they're talking about, because it's hard learning that skill of having the conversation and being able to sit down with a drink with them after. It definitely was something that didn't come just overnight. It came a lot of debates. In my class, there was one boy, he was completely opposite to me. Literally everything was the complete opposite. Anything I said, there was always a debate. And at the time I was like, he's an asshole. I can't At the time I was like, I cannot go into that class and have this again. But I have him to thank for it. Like, do you know what I mean? Now I'm like, if I didn't have that whole time, if I didn't have that wall every time I said something, then I wouldn't have kept going. I genuinely do think I would have just stopped, because if I'd stayed in St. Collins, like just like what you say, I would have only been talking to people around me that agreed with what I was saying, and I would have been bored. It would have, you know what I mean? Everyone was saying, yeah, we all love Champagne, I don't know, let's put up the tricolours outside. It would have been so boring. But having to go into that, and it's all about going outside your comfort zone, having the hard conversations, having that conversation where you don't know where it's going to go and what someone's going to say.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Do you think like kids growing up now, like obviously most high schools would be like Protestant Catholic, like one or the other. Like, do you think what do you think kids are missing out on from like not going? Like, because obviously like me and Shay went to the same high school, which was Catholic, and Ross went to like, I think yours, you were saying before, it was sort of mixed. Ross.
My high school would have been a predominantly Protestant, but I would say I had a friend group of like 10 people, and like 5-6 of them were all come from a Catholic background. Like the only main thing that I saw was they didn't offer Gaelic or like hurling or anything as a sport. It was rugby or it was hockey. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the main thing that would have been missing out is it's just the conversations. It's that the Protestants don't actually have 4 heads. You know what I mean? Like they're not all just mini Arlene Fosters running around, and they're not all just Jim Allisters. You know what I mean? It's just so too much was like coming from a small town and coming from a small school. It's very easy to get stuck in a bubble. It's very easy to think that your opinion is fact, and that anything else against that is just an attack on yourself again, trying to get out there and doing the conversations. And if it started from like a really young age, now I don't know. And obviously a lot of people, religious people, that's a completely different aspect of it. People that have a big religious connection, they're going to say, well, I went to the Catholic school to, obviously have the Catholic ethos and everything that comes with that and all the rest. Wasn't really very, very religious. I was Catholic by name, really, and Catholic by growing up like that. So I would find it easy to say, well, maybe have 2 days a week, have the mixed class, or I always thought it'd be really, really interesting to, in like a Protestant school or a Protestant predominant school, go in and teach Irish history. Go in and stick an Irish teacher in there, or go in and say about the Irish history and why the war happened, why the Civil War happened, why partition happened, and give the history of it. And do the exact same thing with the Catholic schools. Stick in a British teacher in there and stick them in and let them know about the British Army. I myself, very little information about the British Army, what it means to people, why it means so much to people. the only thing I ever knew from the British Army was the Irish history that I learned. So what they brought in, the black and tan and stuff like that. So you're completely conditioned from being 15, 16, 17 to think these things are wrong or think these things are bad, when someone else has been conditioned to think the complete opposite. So I think it's ridiculous to realize that they're going to grow up and think anything different.
Do you think we'll ever move away from that sort of school system where we're dividing children based on their religious beliefs? Or they're all, I know there's mixed schools now, but do you think it'll ever just become completely like that?
I don't think so. I think there's too much, too much connection to the Irish church or the Irish chapel, like the Irish chapel, the Catholic Church. There's too strong of a connection. They give too much money, and I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. It's the funds and the money. And MLP, what I did, the Marfelt Learning Partnership, that was a step in like the right direction. So that was happening with loads of different subjects. It wasn't just politics. It was happening with, the sciences and technology and everything. You went to different schools for all of that. So I think it's a step in the right direction. But in terms of primary school, I generally don't think Waynes care. I just don't think they do. And it's the parents at home. I think once that generation sort of dies out, I suppose you say, as soon as that goes away, we're going to be left with our Waynes, God forbid, but we're going to be left with they'll be raised differently. They'll be raised in a different mindset. And I hope you're always going to have the person that's commenting the tricolour or the Union Jack under Kill FM's post. Like that's always, they're never going to go away. Some people, that's, do you know what I mean? They're always going to stay, but that's just down to uneducated. I think that's just down to ignorance and something that can be, ignorance is something that can be undone. Do you know what I mean? It just takes a bit of effort.
I think it's like one of the good things I would say about our generation is that like we don't really care now. Like you're saying, like you've a good group of mates that are Protestant, like us three are mates. Like it doesn't really matter to us anymore. Sort of like would obviously take the piss out of each other and like joke about it, but like at least we're joking about it. Like there'd be people that would be properly like, what the fuck are you on about? Get real thick with it. Like.
I got a God Save the Queen CD for my 21st from them. Like that was my birthday. I haven't put it on yet, to be fair, but fingers crossed.
Ross is just sitting there like, what's wrong with that?
You have that CD too?
He's got 5 copies.
Which volume? Digital or CD version? Do you have the vinyl as well?
Vinyl. Ross is the vinyl pinned up in his room in a picture frame. But
that's what I was able to get.
Just to go back to the politics, like, is there any parties? Obviously, like it's like Sinn Féin and the DUP would be the two big main ones. But is there any sort of smaller parties that you think are really like trying to make a difference or anything? Or is that a bit of a shit question?
No, not at all. I think the UUP, surprisingly enough, the UUP could have had a lot more of an impact than they had last December. So obviously last December was the general election over in Westminster. And Steve Atkin could have done a real good job there. He could have went out and he could have really, did stuff for the people in his constituency. And he didn't do it. But you could see that the effort was there. He went away from the UUP, would have been a very predominantly Protestant party back in the day. It wouldn't have been something that Catholics or nationalists would have ever even considered voting for. It just wouldn't have happened. It was sort of like, Sinn Féin, DUP, or, teammates, and then it was UUP and SDLP. So like they were sort of paired together as well. So it wouldn't be a thing Catholics would have even conditioned, but seeing that it's sort of coming through the works. You can see it, the work's there being done in the background. Now again, the SDLP, Colm Eastwood, I don't know. I think he's actually losing a lot of support. After he brought out, I think there was an interview or something that he was doing, and he said the British Army should come over and police the COVID restrictions. This was during like peak time where there was everyone getting fines and stuff. And he lost a lot of support from that, especially because of where his constituency is up in Derry and so close to like all of them areas where they're still not over it. Not that they're not over it, but the history is still very, very fresh there. And again, you're able to empathize with that because you know the history and because you know what sort of happened there and all the rest. I think they're going to lose a lot of support, and the smaller parties, maybe like Alliance, Alliance could, if they got their act together, they could come out and do. I don't know.
I
just
just
think.
remember. Sorry to cut you off. I just remember like reading into the alliance. It was like one of the elections or something, and like they just seemed like one party that I sort of thought, oh, like they seem like very unbiased. They're just actually trying to do actual political things rather than it being this whole sectarian thing. Like.
That's what a lot of our generation is looking for too.
I think.
Yeah. See,
Definitely,
the thing that
100%,
frustrates me is like growing up, it's like you would just have been told, obviously, when you were like turned 17 or whatever, and you're or 16 and you're allowed to vote, like your family would have just been like, "Oh, you vote Sinn Féin," like. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it would have been the same in a lot of houses. Definitely, it would have. I was going to say it's probably not every house, but no, it definitely is. It that would have happened a lot. I just think that Alliance need to start doing something about it. You know, they're very good at talking, and on paper they're very, very good. You know what they're saying. And Numi Long's done unbelievable work. Like they're just, I don't know. Maybe I see them as, when I look at them on like the likes of the Stephen Nolan show and stuff, they just seem like somebody that's there to sit in the middle rather than actually do something. Instead of actually going out and saying, listen, this is what we're doing for you. This is what we're doing for the students. Blah blah blah. They're just sitting being, you know, boy in the middle, and it's boring sometimes to watch, and they don't actually get an answer at the end. It's like I say, it's exactly like Stephen Nolan. He just doesn't do anything. He just, you know, makes a lot of noise without a lot of work behind the whole thing. That's it.
Do you think
likes a lot of crisps?
Do you think like do you think Stephen Nolan himself was part of the problem, like his show and all, like with sectarianism? Like he sort of just fuels it. Like we sort of chatted about it like a good while ago, but like he gets ones on just to like stir shit. Like there's no real actual decent stories ever come out of the show.
Yeah, I was on like the Stephen Nolan, like I've been to the whole thing and seen it, and you know, been up at the studio and everything, and I used to listen to him quite a bit. Because like I say, is even though if you don't agree with him, I always would have thought, you know, I used to watch Trump rallies. I'm completely anti-Trump, but if you're having a debate with somebody, you have to be able to come back to something, like, you know, you have to go into the other side. So I used to listen to Stephen Nolan for exactly that reason. And I think he just hones into certain topics and just doesn't let it go. He's not a news reporter, he's not a journalist. See, when he went into the Holy Lands, I completely freaked out about that. Like, that was not okay. He went into the Holy Lands during the whole corona, like the pandemic, and was interviewing drunk students. Like, that's insane. Why nobody else picked that up? Why I was waiting for other journalists to come along and be like, that's pretty unlawful some way. Like, there's something that's not right there. And the whole, I know it was terrible at the time. 100%. It was Stephen Nolan. I stopped listening. Like, I physically couldn't listen to it anymore when he kept going on about the Bobby Story funeral. So Bobby Story obviously was the SRA man, and Michelle O'Neill went to the funeral and was seen shaking hands or hugging. Sorry, she was seen breaking COVID restriction rules. So she hugged someone at the funeral, and there was a photo taken of it. Completely wrong. It's, you know, that she went against the rules. She's one of the leaders of the biggest party of the country. Completely ridiculous. He talked about it for 4 months. He talked about the whole thing. I mean, religiously every morning. He talked about how can you trust somebody that goes to the Bobby Story funeral. Once it was, what it represented, and then also, oh God, it was driving me mentally insane. I couldn't listen to it anymore. And then when you see things again, I listened to him just the other morning. I turned it on after the whole Rangers thing happened. So after the whole celebration of, all the street parties and stuff. Yeah. And it was mentioned. There's a few people rang in and said about how tired it was now, but it was nothing to the same extent. 10 minutes later, he then said, what are we going to do with the students in the Holy Lands? So you can never be completely unbiased. Everybody's subjective. Everyone, he's just not biased. He brings himself across as somebody that's this middleman. He's just not. And I think people need to realize that as well.
I want to give you a voice. Is what he says, isn't it?
We chatted about it in the podcast, and we were just like, if you really wanted their opinion, why would you not go in during the day when everyone's sober, or go to like Queen's outside the library or something? Like, wait till they're full of drink and then fucking like frustrated. Like,
Disgusting.
what you're gonna get a reaction. Like, if you were full of drink and Stephen Nolan was there trying to fucking wind you
My
up, like,
political career would be over. You would not be on this podcast. I can already tell. I might have been on the podcast for a different reason. I'd be like, so why did you get arrested? It would be a completely different story. But it was completely insane in my eyes, completely mental. My Twitter was, I just didn't shut up about it. I was like him, I just didn't shut up about it for like 2 days, and I actually tweeted him and texted him and said, I obviously was in like contact with some of his team, so his like management team and his recruitment team and stuff like that, and I had emailed them all. I wanted to interview him, like I wanted to interview him so bad. I tweeted him. He even like I've seen him responding to like my tweets and stuff. Like I've seen him like reacting to them, and he even like quoted one of them and like replied to it that way. And I was like, just text me. I was like, I want to like interview you properly. And I told him, I was like, drink 2 bottles of Vodka Falls. We'll see how you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, take a few dragon soup with you, and we can have a good time.
It'd take a few more than 2 bottles, I think, to get him drunk. Like, what do you know? Have you spoke to him before? Then do you know him?
Mm-hmm.
What would you spoke to them about, like, or just?
I wouldn't have. I don't go out with him like that. No, we're not.
I don't know, but I just
Figure out the Holy Lands.
She's the one behind the camera holding the boom.
Yeah.
You fucking tell him, Stephen.
Stephen, he looks poleaxed away over and interview him.
No, well, I knew him from, like I say, we went up. I had to go up. I just kept, anytime I was in school, I just said yes to things. I didn't even know what I was getting myself into. But there was something I could sign up to, and I put my name down. Someone else putting their name down. I just didn't expect to win. And we had to go up and have a debate with all of these different people from the north. And they watched the debate, and then they would choose people to be on the panel. That's how they do it. So I went up maybe a couple of times.
Is this top table thing?
Yeah, sort of like that. And it was sort of the same thing. Did you do it as well, or did you just
No, I never do it. Like I've had one political experience in my life. I went up to Stormont whenever I was in P7 to campaign to politicians about reducing, reusing, and recycling. And I'm not sure who it was. I think it was a member of a predominantly Protestant party. Give me a piece of quiche. Right, random story. I got food poisoning. So
God.
I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure like
Greta Thunberg.
Exactly. But they poisoned me up in Stormont, so I'll never be back.
Yeah, well, that's what you had to do. To be on like the top table, you had to go up and you have a debate with like everybody, and it was very obvious they were choosing people that were all very different to each other. So there would be one that was, they just wanted a variety of people, really. And I remember our conversation was about the legalization of marijuana and the decriminalization of Class A drugs. So it was like all about, should it be decriminalized and seen as like an issue, like a health issue more than a criminal act.
Yeah.
And obviously everyone was like, oh no, it shouldn't be legalized, blah blah blah, and all the rest. So I just started to throw a spanner in the works. I was like, yeah, go for it. I was like, let's do it. I was like, why not? I was like, legalize marijuana. And then obviously everyone it's like throwing away a grenade and like a big bomb. I just like, yeah, say it and see what comes back. So I was the only one that said it. I think that's why I didn't get chosen, actually. But not to say that.
You sitting there smoking a joint, being like, yeah, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was like, yeah, why, absolutely. I was like, do it. And obviously it came with a lot of like backlash. I handled it pretty well. I'm not gonna say for a 16-year-old by herself, I'm gonna say that's probably the one time I actually nailed the conversation. Like with absolutely no idea. I had no statistics. We got the titles over there. So it was like, here's this, work with it. And I mean, I surprised myself with what I came out with. I was like,
what was your argument?
My argument was that coming past like through the troubles and everything, that's what their argument was. It was like, we're actually not stable enough to deal with marijuana. And I was like, surely that makes it more
how have they
stable.
managed to relate that to the troubles like weed?
Where's that? It's the fucking Nolan show.
Nolan's just handpicked them, like.
It was that we're not, as a society, we're not stable enough to be dealing with marijuana, and that we shouldn't be decriminalizing the drugs because why wasn't we weren't allowed to do that, because then it would just be like more of an effect to take drugs. So that like the deteriorate, like obviously going to jail and stuff was a big deterrent to taking
Get away.
cocaine. You know, that's yeah, absolutely. You don't take cocaine, you don't want to go to jail.
There would be less.
Yeah.
There would be less folk arguing. Everybody would just want to be sitting in eating packet of Monster Munch and watching memes.
We need to legalize it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Chill out.
So it'll solve
No,
everything.
I 100%. I just said to them, I was like, the fact that we're not stable enough. I goes, the troubles would show resilience more than anything else. I was like, it's what some people need. They really just need to calm down. They need to take 30 seconds of their day and just be like, right, let's take a wee step back and look at life. Let's talk about what the planet actually looks like. Do you know what I mean?
Fair
I
enough.
was like, let's just
Have a spliff to
smoke.
solve your death.
Yeah.
What am I saying?
Wow.
have a smoke and think about cushions and how soft they are, and find happiness in the small things. Do you know what I mean? So I think
I
they
just
were
thought
quite
about that there.
surprised
Did you like that? Right off the top of my head. That's them 4 years of marketing just coming into play.
It's better than the song.
You need to go back for another 4.
You're getting there.
Um,
One of the other things that we sort of were talking about before you came on, like the whole Brexit thing, obviously is the main topic of conversation at the minute in Northern Ireland. With where's this border going to go? Like, what's your opinion on it, and sort of educate us a bit about it, like.
Well, obviously, again, like I say, it's a very subjective story. I grew up and what I think about it. I think that I was completely against Brexit. I was 16 when they did the vote, and even then I knew it was ridiculous, and that might be get me cancelled for saying, but I think it was completely ridiculous. It was done for all the wrong reasons. People were so uneducated about the whole thing. And even going back to that, like, if you look at some of the headlines during that time, it was literally just get the migrants out. It was get the migrants out and get us our jobs back and utilize the UK and make it a stronghold again. It's just, once you learn about what that is, like what they actually mean when they say that, it was completely ridiculous. It was just empty statements, and all of the money that was going to be pumped back into the NHS and all of the lies that were told. I think the vote was completely invalid, but at the same time, respecting the whole democracy thing and all that there jazz, you can't go back on it. I think in the long run, after all of the deals that have been through with Theresa May and Boris Johnson, all of the deals and all the lies that have been told, I think the best thing that we could do, embrace it. Like, this is really putting me out there. I'll get streaming abuse, but I think it would be for Northern Ireland to stay exactly as it is, to stay exactly how it is and have the connection. So obviously Northern Ireland is deemed to stay in the single market, which means that we would be able to trade with the EU. We'd be able to still trade with Europe without the huge cost of tariffs. We'd be able to deal with the EU and still trade with the likes of Germany and France with the huge car industry. And it's insane how much money you could make as a direct port, so the EU would be able to trade through us. You would still have that trade market with the South. We would still be trading with the South anyway because of the open border, and you'd still be able to trade with the UK. So the amount of businesses that would come to Northern Ireland to set up shop so that they could trade. We're one of the only countries in the world that we grow into dual nationality. So that's a given. We're all born both British and Irish, whether anyone wants to say that or not. That you can have dual nationality if you want it. And that we're one of the only countries in the world that has that. And so now to be the only country in the world that has these 3 direct, strong trading profiles and trading ports, it's insane that anyone would want anything different. So even having that border in the Irish Sea, it's not going to stop that. If you think about what that actually is, all of that is extra checks. And, who cares? As long as you're getting that over here, the price of our milk isn't going to go up crazy because the farmer can't import the food for the cows, or the price of things aren't going to go mentally insane because people can't afford to buy them, because the shops can't afford to buy them because the tariffs are so high. It's when it starts to impact your everyday life, when you have to pay crazy taxes and things that you wouldn't have had to before, and the price of wages aren't going to go up, so it just means you're going to go out of money. Do you know what I mean?
So you're basically saying, like, there's not really is there going to be much of an effect on us then, or like it just seems like a win-win situation. Like, what do you?
Yeah, literally. No, that's exactly it. I think as the North, we're we're completely different to England, and the mainland is completely different. You know, Scotland, I think, are a bit raging, not us, because Scotland are sort of stuck over there. They can't really do anything. They're not going to have another referendum, I don't think, anyway. We can have a win-win situation. You know, obviously we'll see signposts and stuff with like a no border, like a no Irish Sea border and stuff like that. That would never work if we still want to have that strong relationship with the EU. We have to have one of those. We have to have an Irish border. And it just has to, you know, it's just one of these things that aren't going to actually affect us. But small businesses, that will be crucially dependent on what's going to happen. My daddy has a really small business. He makes trailers, so obviously he'll be getting a lot of things from like Germany, and he gets a lot of his resources from, you know, the EU and the UK. So if he had to start paying like crazy tariff fees and crazy, you know, commission just to bring it over here, he wouldn't be making any money. It'd be a waste of time. So I think they'll be the people that are most affected by the whole thing. In terms of us, the drink might go up. The price of drink might go up a bit. They'll tax that. They'll tax the drink and they'll tax the cigarettes. But I think that would be the highest thing. I don't know if anyone, again, people might care about the whole UK sovereignty thing. I don't know. I again, not something I have, but people say it's a stepping stone to like a united Ireland, and I can't see that. I don't know. I just can't see that yet.
Like the main benefit of staying in the UK is obviously the NHS as well. Like
100%.
Looking at it just from that point of view, I'm just like, why would anyone, like, obviously like Sinn Féin supporters would be like, yes, United Ireland, but like logically, like we're getting free healthcare. Like, what is the other benefit that we would get? Like the cons sort of outweigh the benefits. Like, what would be the benefit of United Ireland, do you think?
Well, again, like say that obviously the price of living is a lot more expensive. My brother, he lives down in Athlone, just down Westmeath. So we would have known the effects of having to live down there and having to pay for everything. It's insane, the money. Obviously, you get a higher wage, so that's a given as well. But that again is cancelled out by the price of living, and things are taxed differently. And in terms of an actual day-to-day, what would be the advantages? I myself can't see any, not right now anyway. Of course, it would be completely different if we didn't have that situation with the European Union. So if we had been taken out of the EU and we were told the question, oh, well, what would be the benefit? It would be that trade market. You know, if we didn't have the EU in the north, I would 100% say the trade market would be more important than having the NHS, because without that trading line, the businesses in the north would go bust. Like there'd be so much bankruptcy, and it would be hard for us to even get a house, you know, in 10, 15 years. It would make our lives a lot more difficult if we didn't have that. So I think where we are right now, we just have to stay here for a little while. You know, just everyone just leaves alone. Just let us do our own thing.
Get the businesses in.
Let's get the businesses in, get the people over here, get the companies working, get the whole thing back again, the offices, and have a proper government. They need to wise up there, you know, realize that there's so much opportunity. They're actually never talking about building an aquarium. Like they're going to spend millions on building an aquarium. Or any of us going to go see fish? Like I just feel like it's not a thing.
And Titanic Quarter.
Yeah, like fair enough. The whole tourist aspect, but there's an aquarium around the north somewhere that nobody goes to. So like Newton Arch or something. Something really random. And nobody goes.
Armagh have a planetarium, and I only figured this out the other day.
The only one in Ireland, isn't it?
I was up in Armagh with them, and we drove past this, and I just seen this sign. And I was like, Armagh Planet. I said, do you figures have a planetarium?
It was so funny because Ross was sort of saying like what do you have here that Ballymena it doesn't have, like, you know, and then next thing I drove past the planetarium, he's like, is that a planetarium? And I was just like, when?
Yeah, the stronghold of the north.
The only one is it the only one in Northern Ireland, or the only one in Ireland or something? What's Ballymena got? Yeah,
a nuclear bunker.
It's got the range. That's the best place in the north.
I always say the fact we have a nuclear bunker is class. Like, you have to buy it. Obviously, not everybody can just pile into this thing, but at the same time, it's like, you know, realistic, if there is a nuclear attack, and then you're like, if I own a bunker in Ballymena, a nuclear bunker in Ballymena, if there's ever a nuclear attack, Thomas will be like, oh, can I come stay? And I'm gonna be like, no.
No, get in your planetarium.
I hope your planetarium, the only one in Ireland, can save you.
We'd be able to see, you'd be able to see any threats from the planetarium, so you'd have time to get away. Like,
I would still be in the range by a new bedsheet.
Yeah,
There's range in Armagh too.
Buying a plan. Oh, shut
Is
up.
there?
No one
Quarter
cares.
down.
4 down.
Close enough. Like.
Really going up in the world?
Yeah.
We have a cinema.
Place to be, like. We have a cinema in Armagh as well.
All right, well, dead on. We'll move on.
Cinema,
I digress.
planetarium,
actually.
leisure centre.
One thing I was going to ask you was, and it's completely left me now that we started talking about planetariums.
I thought you froze there.
Swimming pools. I was actually going to ask you something that was quite important. Yeah. So, what would be the thing that you would say young people aren't talking about, or people in general aren't talking about enough? Like, is there a topic that you would look at and be like, no, like, why you're so busy talking about X, you're not discussing something more important, which is why. And obviously, this is subjective, because something that you think is more important, I could think is not important. But is there anything that
100%.
frustrates you, where you're just like, why is this not being talked about more?
Definitely, like the poverty in the north. That 100% the poverty level in the north is insane. We foster, so our house, we have had foster wings through our house for as long as I can remember. We've been in it at least 10, 15 years. And through that, obviously not every case is the exact same, or every case is like that, but a lot of the time you get to see people from all aspects, with all backgrounds. And people normally think poverty looks like, you know, not being able to eat, or empty cupboards, or not having a house and stuff like that. I think poverty is completely different. It's when, you know, you can't actually afford to put heating in your house. And a lot of people are on that line. And I think it's only going to get worse with the whole coronavirus and all that. I think a lot of people are on that poverty line, just borderline homeless, that, oh, they're getting by, they still have their car that may be 3 months overdue of their payments. You know, they might be driving around in their BM and they might look okay, but in the background, they're struggling. And there's a lot of people like that. There's a lot of people just making ends meet. And so any work that I would do with people that are now homeless, it would be literally anyone could be homeless tomorrow. You know, you have no idea what your situation is going to be. It just changes so quickly. And then from that, it just starts, all of the other facts that you're going to hear from that is just going to ball and roll into this huge, big issue when it could so easily be prevented. You know, a bit of support back when they're maybe not making their bills, or a bit of support when the weans aren't going to school and getting their dinners. Like, that support is what's needed, first of all, to prevent all of that in the future. And one thing that actually drives me a wee bit insane, anytime I go up to Belfast, so I'd be very prone to go out, like, just in the weekends, you know, have a walk around, just get out of the house these days. But I always see there's over the last year, anyway, obviously because of the coronavirus, so many empty offices, and so many empty buildings and hotels. So for the last year, hotels have been completely shut down. Like, there's been nobody in them rooms and nobody in them beds. Yet there's hundreds of people sleeping on the streets. And my common sense, or my head, would tell me, what would be the issue there of letting people sleep in there? You know, you've got the means to give, so why would they not do it? And again, people might say, well, they'll just take advantage, they'll just do this, that, or the other. I just don't think we're in a position to judge anybody when it's so easily just around the corner. You know, talking to people that are on the streets, they say, you know, they always, the one thing I've actually been asked a few times, which is you wouldn't actually ever even think about, they would always say, well, did you go to uni? And I haven't been to like university yet. I just went, like I said, the foundation degree. And I would say, no, I haven't actually got any student debt or anything. He's like, well, then you're 10 steps ahead of anybody that's got the degree. You know, they've got to pay that off over the next 5-10 years. And he says, sitting in that chair, sitting on the ground, he feels like he has more than some of the people walking past Botanic, because they're going just to an equally cold house, having to have 30 grand worth of debt over their heads for the next 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. He says it's scary how easy things can change and how quickly situations can change. And I think growing up, having people that maybe have been affected by poverty before, having them sort of people in my house every day and growing up with them, you very quickly realize that it's not hard to help them. You just, it's whatever you would want yourself.
It is mad how people's sort of, I feel like I was kind of brought up in a house where we were always like sort of drilled with money management. And it was always something that whenever I was younger, like I always kind of thought this is silly. But now that I'm getting older and I know people that I would have thought, oh my gosh, they're doing so well. Look at them in their car. And yeah, like I'm not saying there's anything wrong with like finance and stuff, but like I do think people need to have a sort of thought as to, and it's the same thing. I think that annoys me with this whole mortgage thing being talked about with the low deposit, where I'm sitting there thinking like, how many young people are gonna just be like, yeah, we need to get a mortgage, this is like the next step, and then they do get it and the interest rate will change, you assume that risk, and then it's like, oh, we actually don't have any money to pay this. That scares me, because I'm more thinking along the lines of, with that then comes debt, with that there comes mental health problems,
it all springs from 100%. Like, and when I hate to say it, but when people see those on the street or see people sitting, there was a wee man that obviously every morning when I was going to Belfast, he sat in the exact same spot, like the exact same spot. He was sitting just beside City Hall, and walking past him, you would think he was, was he drinking? Was he on drugs? You'd be maybe a bit weary, you don't know what the situation is. And you could very easily judge someone like that. Not that it would be your fault and there would be no intent to be nasty behind it, but you could very easily feel uncomfortable. So, even just stopping and saying hello to them sort of people and asking, well, how are you getting on? What's the crack? And they'll very easy, they'll want to sit down and talk to you. So one time I sat down, I think I was hungover. I didn't want to go to class, and I was just like walking along, and you're sort of still part drunk. And you're just like, wait, what am I going to do here? Because I'm already 20 minutes late, so the teacher's not going to let me in. So it's just sort of like, I was walking down, and the wee man was sitting at the, every morning he'd say hello to everybody. It would like literally say hello to every single person walking past. I was like, let's go to Cafe Nero. So I brought him in, had a Cafe Nero, and it broke my heart because he was standing at the door, and he was all like, oh, I'm not allowed to go in there. I was like, why not? I was like, it's pretty sure everyone's allowed in here. There's no bouncer or anything. And he was all like, no, I'm not allowed to go in there. He looked down at his wee still. It broke my heart. So I was like, no, you're paying customer, you're allowed to come in. So he sat down, had a coffee or whatever. And then he just sort of would want to tell you that, like, he wanted to tell like why he was there or what the story was. And it was something as simple as losing his job. Like, it started because he lost his job, and it was like back in like 2008, like when the credit crunch and it was really, really bad. That's when it started. And he said, just from that, he goes, you get your job, you're on and off jobs, you're just meeting the rent, you're barely feeding yourself. He goes, it gets so bad, and you can't claim benefits because you're still needing to get that job, because you need the mental health aspect of getting out of the house and doing something every day. That job might just be paying your wage or paying your rent, but he goes, you need to be out and doing that. And he said that eventually it all catches up with you when you don't get that help. It catches up, and the bills all come up, and this need for all these young people to have the fancy cars and the finance cars. And again, nothing wrong with that at all, because I know a lot of people that do that love their cars, and they're, it's a great way of being able to afford the nice things. But and like I said, when we were growing up, that was it was the shitty cars you could all wreck around in until you could afford a nice car like that. My brother's 21, and we were sitting outside a shop yesterday, and his door fell off. Like, the door of his car fully fell off the car. He drove it until he couldn't drive it anymore. And that, to me, I would much rather see him with a door less, with a car that he can afford and a car that he can upkeep, than a big fancy Merc or a big fancy, I don't know, Audi or something, that just to look like they're achieving something rather than actually building it up and doing it.
I think like that's probably what we're saying about like the good thing about our generation, about the whole like sectarianism thing. I think like that's probably one of the downsides of people our age, is like how big of an influence the likes of Instagram and all has. Like, everyone wants to be seen like they're doing so well, no matter what it takes. Like,
yeah,
so,
and it's sad. It definitely is.
The likes of finance and all, like, it just seems a bit too easy. Like you even hear stories now with like the likes of Klarna, that one that like Like there's ones that have just got themselves in a shitload of debt because it's that easy. They're just ban and ban and ban, like, and it's just like,
and it's cool now to have like it's literally people make money from buying clothes off places, and it's something as simple as that. Like, do you know what I mean? But like the idea of having to me anyway, again, everyone's completely different, but to me, the idea of having a 15 grand car, and me driving a 15 grand car is scary. I hate the idea. I hate the fact that you're stuck into that for the 5, 6, 7 years. You have to pay that every day. I can barely take out a 2-year phone. You know, I can barely take out a 2-year phone contract, let alone a 5, 6, 7 year car payment plan. And again, if you've got the lifestyle that suits that, then happy days, work away with it, go for it. And if you're really into your cars, then like I said, one of my older brother, he, you know, the same day that my twin, his door fell off his Renault Clio, my brother, he bought a new BM and he's buzzing about it. He's 26, he's in a stable job, he's going to be there, you know, he's post university, and he's completely in love with this thing. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he likes more than his girlfriend. So it's like it's completely different situations. I think a lot of people will be very easily sucked into that mentality where, oh well, I'm not doing anything right if I've got a car with, you know, Renault Clio. Do you know what I mean? And that's what a lot of people working with the homeless, they would say, this need to look like they've got money, and this need to look like they're doing really, really well. It just isn't what it's all made out to be. And even him, that man that I was talking to, even him said that the payments that he thought he needed just weren't important anymore. You know, when he just, all he wanted to do was pay his rent and feed himself and, you know, look after his family. It just got to a stage where he said it's not worth it. So I think seeing that as well might be putting me off, but it definitely, it's a big thing that people don't talk enough about, because I don't know, maybe they're embarrassed, maybe they don't want to talk about it, but I think it's something that should be spoke about more.
No, we had David Johnson on, like obviously he owns it, started Outside In, which is like a company that helps the homeless, and he was saying something similar to yourself. Like we were sort of asking him like where it starts, and he's like sort of saying about education, and like basically like similar to what you were saying, is like a lot of the people that are homeless is because like they've been through like traumatic experiences, and they just haven't got back on their feet, or like they've lost their job, and like
something everyone could do.
Yeah,
something that could happen to anybody.
It's
Definitely is. It's scary.
It shows you how big of a problem it is, the fact that like we've just asked you that like a week after having him on, and like not knowing that you were going to bring it up.
Yeah, it's
You
being
know,
talked about, and even the idea of it is being, it's gotten to be more of a conversation. It's scary, and I think, like I say, after coronavirus and after everybody losing their jobs, and there'll be a lot more businesses to go. I think it's frightening how many people will be affected by it. And again, because we foster here, we'll see the extent of it as well. You know, there's like a outcry for foster carers at the minute, because obviously if there's trouble at home or whatever, the first people to be looked after are the children. So we'll see the impact of that as well, even in our house.
Yeah. I feel like that's sort of a good sort of topic to leave it on, because I think we've kept you long enough. I love though the way that, one thing I was going to say is I love the way though that like we had really, normally when say a guest, normally when a person comes on our podcast, we normally have like a wee discussion like half an hour before to prepare, but to be honest with you, we really didn't know how to prepare for this, so I think it's worked out well. We've just actually had a conversation, which is fun. But yeah, no, I think from and like I feel like we need to have more conversations, and we need to listen more as well. It's the one thing I always say. And I don't know if you'd agree with that or not.
Absolutely.
I'd say you would.
100%.
But
100%. No, absolutely, definitely.
I think we've definitely learned from even this conversation talking to you about politics. But yeah, if anyone wants to find you and learn about politics, simply, where do they go?
Yeah, well, like I say, there's the politics page. It's just Politics Made Simple. Keep it easy. And then there's the podcast, obviously, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all things. But like I say, it's not half as professional as this one.
Oh, stop it, you.
So yeah, everyone check out Politics Made Simple, and thanks for coming on. I think we'll end it there.
Of course.
Thank you.
No bother at all. It's been great.